This is Let's Talk Business with your host, Marc Ebinger. Now, here's Mark.
Welcome back to the Let's Talk Business podcast. In studio with us today is Christopher Herring, the Executive Director of the Global Chamber, Texas. Christopher's job is to help businesses navigate into international commerce, such as trade, imports, and exports, which is a whole world I have no idea about, so I'm excited to learn. Christopher is also the President and CEO of Riverwalk Publishing and founder of Future CEO of America, an important initiative to help improve financial literacy, which we need a lot of that, especially in schools. Christopher's achievements include the Texas Titans Award.
Hey.
What does that mean, Texas Titans Award?
Oh, it was an honor that was bestowed upon me recently. Actually, Desiree can tell us more about it, but just knowing that I was being recognized for mentoring and helping people, in life and in business.
All right, love that. Also, the Global Chamber Executive of the Year and 10 times Officer of the Year Award from the United States Air Force. Chris, welcome to the show. Excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm pleased to be here today.
Our talking point today is what are some of the unexpected benefits that business owners experience when they give back to their communities, which I think is very appropriate since I've got 3 people heavily involved in nonprofits here in the San Antonio area. I'm your host, Marc Ebinger, the owner of Krukus Virtual Staffing, a company that recruits and staffs experienced overseas administrative assistants for insurance agents who need help with policy management, claims processing, and client communication.
And I'm Howie Nestel, Marc's co-host today, the owner of Sharkmatic Advertising, a cool ad agency serious about big results. For 35 years, Marc, we've worked with 1,500 clients, not all at once, but over that 3.5-decade period, to help them increase their influence in the world through digital marketing. And we started with the old school marketing stuff, and now it's web design, search engine optimization, and influence marketing. If you don't know what that is, go check out sharkmatic.com or reach out to me and let's have a sit down.
Hi, Desiree Serna here, your Texas nonprofit guru. I'm excited to join today as a guest co-host at Let's Talk Business podcast. Again, what I do is I help individuals, and foundations really are my primary clients. I'm also known as a publicist here in San Antonio, working on celebrity events and so forth. I'm also your Texas nonprofit professor as well, as I've been in higher education for over 10 years. I'm happy to join today.
Awesome. Excited to have you here, Desiree. And also appreciate the connection of bringing Chris in on short notice because we had somebody had a major emergency come up that couldn't be here today. But, I think the earliest some people can get in the show now is like February.
Right. Yeah, we're pre-booked for a long time. So I'm glad that Christopher was able to make it. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. All right. Love that. Okay, a quick reminder to follow the Let's Talk Business podcast on all major podcast platforms and social media where you can catch video versions of the show. You can get to everything easily by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. Now, Let's Talk Business podcast audience has grown to over 25,000 subscribers on YouTube, and the show continues to have a significant impact right here in the San Antonio business community. Now, coming up on October 3rd, the Let's Talk Business podcast has another mega mixer. It's going to be from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. over at Project Cowork Central over behind the old San Francisco Steakhouse, which, by the way, I had a lunch over there last week. I hadn't been in there since the 90s. And
yeah, they still have
good.
the swing and all that stuff, but now they rent the room out for private events. It's no longer a restaurant.
Oh, so it's just a...
Yeah, so it's a catering company owns it, and then they rent it out, but they do catering out of their big kitchen. We've used them before for events.
Interesting. Well, anyway, I was going to say that the food was it was okay. I mean, I wasn't shocked or anything, but the setting was super nice. Yeah. It's really decked out.
Well, they're not sponsors of the Let's Talk Business podcast or podcast Mega Mixer yet. So once they are, we'll give them another review.
We'll give them a shout out.
Right. So speaking of the mixer, so back on that, the tickets are on sale now for just $20, but they are going to be $25 at the door. I suggest you guys get your tickets now. You can get them at satalkradio.com. There's going to be, look, you spend $20 on tickets and you're going to get 20, 30, 40 maybe dollars worth of food, drinks, and there's content creation that's going to be going on there.
Well, you're going to get $200 worth of exposure.
Yeah,
at least, and then $2,000 worth of business, almost guaranteed.
Well, I like where your head's at with that. Almost guaranteed. What does that mean?
That means
it says you'll get as much return on investment as you make it.
That's right.
If you go out there, put yourself out there, really promote yourself. I'll tell you, these networking events an incredible platform for
We
business
we
owners.
make it easy because, like Mark said, there's videography, there's photography, there's red carpet, there's interviews. And then the podcast hosts, even our guest hosts that know a lot of people, get to be there and introduce the people who bought a ticket to come in that may not know anybody, introduce them to somebody who would be an ideal target audience for them, for their business.
Yeah, and the sponsor tables work really good there too, because I think we're going to have, 10 or so sponsor tables, maybe 9 or something. But it's an opportunity to go in there, go meet other business owners at their table because they're wanting to do, to talk about things, and then catch a couple specials, save some money on some stuff you need to get done around the house or whatever.
And so just like the tickets sell out, the sponsor tables sell out also.
They did. Sold out fast.
Yeah,
I got
sold
people
out.
still wanting to be sponsors, and I got to turn them away.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so if you want to be a sponsor, go to satalkradio.com and reach out, because we're going to do these every 4 months or so.
Yeah, probably twice a year is probably what we'll do for the Let's Talk Business one. Yeah,
So
and what's the capacity look like? What does the attendance look like?
250.
Yeah, 250. We'll sell out. We were at capacity. The first one we were at capacity, but we didn't call it a mega mixer because we didn't know it was going to be a mega mixer. Then the second one had more people, and then the third one's going to have even more people. So now it's officially a mega mixer. And here's the neat thing about the money, by the way, Desiree, in case you don't know, and Christopher has one of these too. You all have these postcards in front of you. This is Got You Covered. It's a collection drive for the homeless that I've been working on here and doing for 28 years. And so this podcast mega mixer, just like the ones in the past, always benefit a local nonprofit endeavor. So we've had a camp for kids with cancer. We had the Children's Rehabilitation Institute. So Discovery Camps, CRIT, and now Got You Covered. So the proceeds from the event actually go to Got You Covered. And so Mark and I and the rest of the hosts will decide what we do with the money, but we might go buy socks and underwear for kids at the shelters, at Battered Women and Children's Shelter and at Haven for Hope. So your money does good for community and it does good for your business.
Incredible. And I love that this is a topic of choice here for this particular session. It's so important. What I do a lot is letting small businesses realize that they need to connect with the philanthropic counterpart, right? We have to all pay the rent for living here on earth. And it's also beneficial for businesses to show the philanthropic part and the charitable part of their businesses. How are they giving back? So I love the topic. I'm excited to jump into it.
All right, a quick shout out to Emil Serfani and Project Cowork here in San Antonio for being a gold sponsor for the upcoming Let's Talk Business Mega Mixer on October 3rd. Project Cowork is a company that offers flexible workspaces dedicated to supporting the evolving needs of hybrid, team-oriented, and tech-forward businesses. So if you're looking for a high-end, affordable private office and conference space in San Antonio, I recommend you reach out to Emil and the Project Cowork team and take a tour at one of their amazing facilities. Visit their website at projectcowork.com, or you can call them at 210-942-0113. That's 210-942-0113. All right, so speaking of nonprofits and work in the community, and I know you guys have done a lot, a heck of a lot, and it's humbling actually how much you guys of an impact that you guys have on a regular basis compared to myself, who's fairly new to the. I mean, I was a cop for 24 years, but that's different.
So you did enough good, is what you're saying.
I didn't need
For
to
the
do any more.
community.
I'll say you did your public service.
There we go.
okay?
Yeah. But I mean, you guys are doing it at a different level, and I appreciate that. So what are some of the, and Howie, I'll start with you, but what are some of the unexpected benefits that business owners experience when they give back to their communities?
More money. It's not why you do it, but it's incredible how God, Mother Nature, karma works. And when you put into your community, you get so much more out. And I know different churches and synagogues and mosques probably have some kind of formula for it. I have no idea what the ROI is. I just know it's a lot more than you put in. And a lot of it's not directly in a return on financial investment, but as you start to spend time with people in the nonprofit space, people who are philanthropic, people who think outside themselves, if you want to picture the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, people who are up here towards the self-actualization area, as you start to spend time with them, you start to connect with people who want to help you. They're givers. They're not takers. So then they want to help you in your business because they see that you're making an effort to help others who are least fortunate. And all of that space up here becomes very beneficial to your business. Whereas if you're in the lower part of the triangle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in just trying to fulfill your basic needs, it's very selfish. It's all about you. And I understand you have to get your foundation before you get up here, but rather than waiting towards the end of your career, when you have money, when you pay off your car, when you are close to retirement, when your kids are out of the house, and then think you're going to do something, it's when you're going to derive the least amount of benefit, because you should have done that at the beginning when you first start your business. Make that part of your standard operating procedure. You do well, you also do good. And those are symbiotic.
I know we've had discussions too about how people who can't give money, right, but they can give other things, such as time or talent. Desiree, where do you stand on that?
Yes, well, I believe one thing I want to chime off is what Howie is talking about is servant leadership. Howie is talking about as a leader in business, in the community that you are serving, and business owners do service our community as well. You have to be one that you have to think about more than yourself, right? If we are just thinking in terms of leadership of just ourselves, just our business, we're not thinking in the sense of servant leadership, right? And it comes back to like that theory of right? The theory of relativity, where what you put out in the world comes back to you, right? So I agree with what Howie is saying. If you start thinking beyond yourself, you start thinking about the team, the community that you're partaking in, then you are going to see that return, that blessing come back to you. Karma is real in the business and community environments. And if you give back, it most certainly comes back to you tenfold. That's my experience.
And Chris, so this idea, and I wrote it down when you said it, Howie, this givers, not takers. My thinking is that if you're a taker, and there's a time to be a taker, I get it, but I'm thinking it could bottleneck or restrict your ability to receive. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, absolutely. In business, and I have to agree with Desiree when she talks about servant leadership. As a follower of Christ, I know that that's a principle in which most pastors will teach congregations about. It's better to give than to receive. And so when I look back, even with my own life, I had great role models that always showed us, how to give. Even back in high school, many years ago, I was a part of the Air Force Junior ROTC and learned how to do my first poppy sale fundraiser for the VFW. And then when I learned about the essence of how the funds that young people raise for veterans who were disabled or who just needed more, it gave me a great sense of gratitude and fulfillment. So when I looked at my own career, I hopped on many of the Air Force nonprofit campaigns like the Combined Federal Campaign, which is an opportunity for us to raise money for nonprofits, schools all around the world through nonprofit giving. So I think the essence of giving is really the essence of who we are. And I love Military City, USA, because we have so many veterans here who know about that spirit of giving. Giving in the military is actually a part of, your performance report. It's like, well, okay, you did a great job, but what did you do for the community? And so people like me, I was on steroids for giving and learned a lot about nonprofits through the Air Force, surprisingly.
And Howie, because we've talked about this before too, where people who are in that giving mode, they make it part of who they are, as opposed to somebody who's thinking a lot about taking because they don't understand how they can give when they're in a desperate situation themselves. I mean, what are your thoughts there? What would be your advice to somebody in a situation where they don't feel like they have enough to give?
That's precisely when they have to give. When you can't get ahead because you don't know where your next meal's coming from or your next sale, if you're in business, or your next client, that's exactly when your mindset has to shift and you have to say, hey, what can I put out? Because if you're not getting everything you want, what's happening is you're not putting out everything that you can put out. And so I know it sounds counterintuitive. And the easiest ways to connect is get on the internet, get on the phone, call Haven for Hope, Battered Women and Children's Shelter, Sam Ministries, Any Baby Can, the Food Bank. They have volunteer pages on their websites. They have volunteer coordinators. Just say, look, I've never done anything like this. What can I do? Well, as a matter of fact, we have a big group coming out this Sunday from 2 to 5. We're going to be sorting cans. We're going to be putting in whatever. Then you're going to go and talk to humans.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to say, like, oh, my God, how are you doing? What do you do for a living? Oh, I have a power washing business. Oh, really? As a matter of fact, I have a company that does concrete, and we need sometimes to come and clean up. And, I have a guy that works for me that does power washing, but we rather sub it out to somebody. Why don't you come out and let's have a meeting and that kind of stuff. And that's what starts to happen. It's almost guaranteed. I'm just kidding. We were joking about it.
I will say my husband works for HEB, and other corporations are taking this stance where team building is now, they're taking it to volunteerism. They are taking them to the diaper bank. They are taking their teams to the food bank, and they are showing how to give back. And it really has incredible insights for team and for leaders. They are learning to work in a team. They are learning to give back. There's so much that that is learned here by giving back. Now, I will say when it comes to a business giving philanthropically, right? Like anyone, we have to consider return on investment. I like to tell my clients, when you're giving, look on return on impact. We're looking at a different ROI here. And for nonprofits, that's how we gauge, right?
Oh, I like that. I'm going to steal that.
Besides the bottom line, right? Return on investment versus return on impact versus return on investment. So think about that. Businesses, small businesses, as you are giving back, impact has a way different value than investment.
That's one of the reasons why I retired from the police department after 24 rather than going to 30. I just met with a friend of mine he's at 28 right now. We used to patrol Southside together. He's still doing the same thing. He's a lieutenant over at traffic now, and he's got a great job doing all the things. But one of the reasons I retired was because I was looking to have a greater impact in a way that I think Marc Ebinger can have impact. So yeah, I love that return on impact. Copyright Marc Ebinger 2024.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did he just steal that?
Batman.
All the royalties can come to.
Right.
Yeah, you get a nickel every time I get a quarter.
Right, exactly.
Christopher, when you get people who become members of the Global Chamber and they see the leadership, the servant leadership, as Desiree so aptly put it, and they come to you and they see the example that you guys are setting in your leadership, have you ever had an electrician, a plumber, somebody come to you and say, hey, look, I'd love to do that. I just don't have the money to do it. Do you have any recommendations for them?
Absolutely. I think that when we talk about the ability to give and to serve, it's not always the treasure, but it's sometimes the time and the talent. Mm-hmm. And so when people understand that they have time, talent, and treasure to give, and typically when we're talking about board members who want to serve, whether they're electrician or plumber, whether they're the white-collar CEO who wants to serve on a board, I mean, we always talk about the ability for the board to be able to offer their time, their talent, or treasure. Now, if they can't offer any of the three, then they really aren't the best people to be on the board because they don't get the concept. When I think about chambers of commerce, and I was introduced to the Chamber of Commerce by U.S. Secretary at the time, Ronald Harmon Brown, who served under.
Oh, I know him well. One of my best friends, Leo Saavedra, was his advanced person.
Wow. So
yeah.
I met Secretary Brown through a friend and a student at the University of Akron when I was on the faculty there, Morris Reed, who introduced me to the secretary. And I became the secretary's protocol escort whenever he would come out to California. The Air Force started to not only train me and they equipped me to be a very good personnel officer, but they offered me the opportunity to be a protocol officer for President Ronald Reagan at the Reagan Library in his retirement years. And so I had the chance to meet him, Secretary Ron Brown, General Colin Powell. And so I had some very unique opportunities to kind of hang out with people who were really important and to siphon some of their leadership. Secretary Brown told me, he says, Chris, don't get out of the Air Force because a lot of the military officers are basically recruited at the say 4-year stage to join corporate America. And he says, hey, there's so much in the military that you can do it for 20 years, get a good retirement, have a health system for life, and then jump into civilization as we know it, and join a chamber of commerce. In fact, lead a chamber of commerce. So I've led 3 chamber of commerce organizations, and when I went to Disney World, I saw that even Disney World has a chamber of commerce. You walk through the gates, you see Goofy on a bench, and there it says Chamber of Commerce. And why? Because businesses know that the Chamber of Commerce has an image of giving back, of being benevolent. So if a business can be aligned with a chamber, people typically have a better feeling of that business. And that's why most businesses do join. There are other reasons, of course, to make money, but I just always thought about that.
Well, Secretary Ron Brown would be very proud of you because you followed his advice and you did well. For those of you who don't know, Secretary Ron Brown died in a tragic airplane accident I believe, in Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Is that right? And so my friend Leo was working for him and had been working for him for several years and had an opportunity to move to another branch of government. And his last mission trip was the one right before the plane crashed.
I see.
Whoa.
And so he got a separate sense of him having to continue the mission of what Secretary Brown had been doing in commerce. And, it's just, he particularly stood out to me as a great Secretary of Commerce because of what he did for a lot of small businesses, versus the kind of, usually you find government and big business are pretty much aligned. He had a different a view of that. So.
Absolutely.
So, Chris, tell me a little bit about your background. So, obviously military, and then just take us on a 90-second journey from where you're at into where you are now.
Yeah. So, after I retired from the United States Air Force in 2011, I looked at life a little bit differently. I did take the advice of Secretary Brown, and I applied for a position with the Alamo City Black Chamber of Commerce, which is actually the oldest chamber of commerce founded by an African-American woman. Ureta Fairchild. And when I had the opportunity to apply, because Secretary Brown told me to start a business, so I started a business while I was in the Air Force, and that business had some time on its books. So when I applied for the chamber position, I had a regular civilian resume, not just presenting myself as a retired military officer. With that being said, I was hired to be the executive director. And then after I served for about a year at the city level, I was actually nominated to be the chairman for the Texas Association for African American Chambers, and actually was elected to do so not only for one term but 2 terms. And in that capacity, I was a leader who had to advocate, train, and equip African American businesses, and we had at the time about 250,000 across the state of Texas. And we would travel across the state. Charles O'Neill, who's the current president and was the president then, really showed me the ropes of what serving the business community was all about. We'd go to small towns and big cities, and we would meet with the Governor Abbott, and talk about where black businesses were and are. And so I've kind of continued to work with that organization. After my last tour as being the chair, there was really no other place for me to go. I loved the Chamber of Commerce work. I was looking at organizations like the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber, all the chambers, just to find out where could I fit in. Global Chamber San Antonio actually had a vacancy, and I applied for the position. I didn't expect to be hired, but I was. And I was very grateful for the fact that I was able to be the leader of San Antonio. Right now, I control Austin, Houston, and San Antonio are my 3 major markets in Global Chamber, Texas. And we have 525 metropolitan markets around the world. And when a business joins us, they are part of all of those regions. So we're able to make connections without having to ask you for more money. Our chamber membership is the equivalent of every local chamber. And what I like about the Global Chamber, which kind of differentiates us from the rest, is that our directory, our global, our businesses are from around the world. While local chambers really specialize in the local markets, Global Chamber says that we are able to work across regions, across boundaries, and we're the only organization in the world that's doing so. We're celebrating 10 years next year.
Wow, amazing. So I have a couple clients that are from Mexico that are starting their businesses or already started here in the United States. Would they be a good target for the Global Chamber? They don't have a lot of connections in the U.S., but they do quite well in their native country of Mexico, but they want to expand up here. Do you find that you have businesses that are from another country that come here and join your chamber?
Oh, absolutely. And so, Mexico, the city of San Antonio has a really dynamic relationship with Mexico. In fact, we have satellite offices of City of San Antonio in Mexico. And so I work with the Economic Development Department and the International Global Office. And so that's a great partnership. And so what we find is that some of our members, while they may be in Mexico, they can join the Global Chamber. They can actually sign up for the Mexico Metro and still email me, contact me, and then figure out how do they develop a game plan for San Antonio or maybe Austin or Houston. All of our executive directors, we work closely with all of our members across the board. So there's no territorial, encroachment. So if a member calls me from Los Angeles, I don't have to feel like, well, did you talk to the Los Angeles executive director first? They can call me directly. And I like the fact that my members can also call the various metro leaders and do the same. We don't have a real hierarchy when it comes to member-to-member relationships. And I compliment the founder of Global Chamber, Doug Brunke, who created this organization because he was really considerate about how do we help local economies grow in the areas of international trade. And when you look at international trade, it should be the stimulus of your GDP. So when you look at companies that typically they don't fit well with the local model because they're doing international work, maybe the local chambers focus more on the local issues, but a global chamber with an international focus can help companies really shine in a market in places where they've never would have had visibility. So I take my clients into Africa, and I take them into Asia, I take them into Europe, and all of the Americas. And I've had a very special relationship with UT Austin because whenever they get business cohorts that come in just to spend time with them, whether they're the Mandela Fellows, whether they're the Fellows of Americas, they call me and I go in and I teach them how to network in the United States or the U.S. And I do that because I believe it's really important to help people to get a good foundation, understanding of how the U.S. economy works, how to forge relationships, and how to make better business decisions.
Does that, like if a business, like for mine, for example, I run a virtual staffing company, and out of Latin America is where we source some folks out of there. Would there be a benefit, say, for example, for me to join a global chamber to get access to resources in these countries where I could actually improve my ability to recruit employees? Would that be a yes? Or?
Absolutely. And so what we ask our members when we're onboarding them is like, who would you like to meet and what can we do for you? And so what we believe is important is almost like establishing a contract. And so what I like about it is that I'm going to take into account your business needs. Most chambers don't really do this because it's too hard to keep up with each member. But we do this because when we get to your renewal, we want to make sure that you can renew in confidence to know that we helped you to satisfy making the connections that you need, the strategic alignment that you need, and also the visibility. And so we also have a virtual platform that we use with Zoom primarily. But every day of the business week, there's something on our Global Chamber calendar at globalchamber.org where our members can actually tie into the event, and they can learn about AI. They can learn about global supply chain management. They can learn about all the intricacies of putting their business together. And so I have a very special relationship with the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. They have a campaign called Making Global Local. So Making Global Local gives me the chance to tell the other chambers, and we can partner with the other chambers because we're really not the same. So they're nonprofit, we're for-profit. We're able to do business consulting at a different level. So we've partnered with the U.S. government and this Trade and Development Agency to be able to take this campaign of Making Global Local so that our mom and pop businesses know that there's more than just San Antonio. And it also takes the pressure off of the city, the county governments, because a lot of small businesses want to get their start with the city and the county. But you know what? Some of our businesses have long relationships that they want to continue forever. In our cities and our counties, they want to rotate new talent, new entrepreneurs into the pipeline. So I say to those business owners, graduate yourself into a global chamber where you can reach the world, and I'll help you to grow your business, because you shouldn't just be dependent upon a city or a county or a state when your business really should be global. And if you're using like a staffing agency type of model, of course, Global Chamber would love to be able to talk about your business, showcase you, and we also have like I call it a Shark Tank type of an appeal. We have the League of Extraordinaires, and the League of Extraordinaires allows businesses to be able to pitch their businesses within, say, a 5 to 10 minute period of time, have questions and answers. But you can also ask the various people who are tuned in or from around the world, this is what I need, this is what I'm looking for, and you can actually develop boards, or you can develop financial resources or distribution channels. That's all available based off of what you pitch to the world.
Great.
Yeah.
For profit. Tell me about that. So that seems like a differentiator. So you're saying the traditional Chamber of Commerce model is set up as a nonprofit,
Right.
and then the Global Chamber is set up as a for-profit model.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So, when I thought about the difference between the models, because I like I said, I've worked traditionally when I came out of the Air Force, I worked for nonprofit 501c6 organizations under the IRS code. And as an executive director, we would have to manage ourselves accordingly. Mm-hmm. We'd have to make sure that we're following the guidelines that the government puts into place. But, when you look at an LLC, or you look at, any organization or business formation that you form, the rules are not the same. And so we have much more latitude to be able to have this thing called commerce that happens across the borders in the same manner and fashion that a business would. So when we're talking about being able to be a true global brand, and I think that sometimes we throw the word global around very loosely when companies really aren't global, but they may be international. They may be like in Mexico, or they may be in Canada, but they are not all over the world. We can say that we have a footprint where we have 525 metro offices that have the ability to connect with people in those locations. So that's global. Our brand is becoming greater known over the past 9 years, going into our 10th year. And I was just blessed this year to be, in the top 5 of all the, global chamber leaders. We've had record amounts of sales in terms of memberships, and we also do sponsorships as well. So the model is the same. The nonprofit model that you see in traditional chambers is the same. And during COVID, which was really a challenging time, most chambers really suffered because the businesses were now trying to figure out how to navigate. We were blessed that Commissioner Tommy Calvert had put the Global Chamber San Antonio in for one of the chamber grants. And the discussion about the chamber being a for-profit versus a nonprofit came up. And so they said, well, show us your mission. Our mission it mimics the mission of every other chamber, except for the fact that we focus on international.
But it was smart to set up organizationally that way under the U.S. legal system or IRS code, because then your hands aren't bound to do things the way the government would want a nonprofit to do things.
That's correct.
And one of the main things that they distinguish between a nonprofit and, like Chris said, there are several different classifications the IRS has for nonprofit organizations. So, for example, here in the state of Texas, Texas says a nonprofit is a nonprofit. That they leave the designation to the IRS. So here, Chris has done something brilliant, and I advise Chris on this. We've talked about it for decades now, actually, as he's worked with different structures of nonprofits. Like he said, here we're dealing with 501c6s. We're dealing with associations. NFL was a 501c6 for a very long time. 501c3s are those covenant type of charitable nonprofits that people seek out. Why? Because donations can be, according to, of course, talk with the tax advisor advisor, but donations can be tax deductible. C4s, they're able to advocate and do social welfare, but they're also able to lobby. There's so many different legalities that are really governing these structures. One thing, though, over all nonprofits is they are not owned by an individual. They're owned by the public at large. And because of that right there, nonprofits are very different than for-profit organizations. For-profit organizations have a lot more latitude, as Chris has explained, autonomy than a nonprofit.
Yeah, you don't have to have open books. You don't have to publish your financials. And let's get this thing straight, because nonprofits, even 501c3s, have to make money.
Yes.
They have to have sales. They buy buildings. They rent offices. So they operate pretty much like for-profit businesses.
Really
And I
do.
think it's possible for for-profits to be mission-centric.
Yes.
Any type of research you'll do on nonprofit, one of the main distinguishing characteristics is it's mission-centric. I say for-profits can do that as well.
And that's why I was saying that Bexar County provided us with a grant during that COVID period as we were trying to figure out how to position ourselves a little bit differently to meet the needs of the community. And the nonprofit guru who, I have to say, her knowledge of this nonprofit world that we're in is great. I met Desiree back when I was a loan executive for the United Way of Bexar County. And then subsequently, I was a board member of the West San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. And we met and we started talking about, how do we give back? How do we serve our communities? At that time, it was just prior to me being selected to be the president for the Alamo City Black Chamber. But I was also hired to represent a merchant service company that was out of Detroit. And they asked me, to take some of my passion for nonprofits and bring it to their industry, which is typically really hated. If you think about it, merchant services is a really hard industry to be in. So I developed the We Give Back USA campaign, and that campaign through all of my fundraising, through the military with Combined Federal Campaign, the United Way, working with the various agencies that you mentioned, Howie, earlier, and the We Give Back USA campaign raised millions of dollars for nonprofits all over the United States. And that's probably what most people don't know about me, but Desiree, she does, and so that's kind of we have such.
And
I
I was going to ask Professor Desiree over here, because I like what you said about companies could be mission driven or mission focused. Because when I went to UT Business School, I still remember a professor telling me the only purpose or primary purpose of any business is to maximize profit for the stockholders. And I led with that. So when you said earlier there's a time to take, for early in my career, I was all about maximizing profit for the stockholder. I'm the stockholder, that's me. I'm 25, I know everything. I'm just going to try to make as much money as I can. Then I came to start to realize, wow, my investment in nonprofit and helping others and serving others is giving me access to philanthropists, billionaires, people that I would never be in front of with a little marketing business. Maybe I should be giving more of that. But I started feeling so good about the work that I'm doing with kids battling cancer and homelessness and that kind of stuff that I almost lost focus on making money. That became the byproduct. And I was focused on something else. So I kind of came to it really by accident. But now I realize how wrong my professor was, how wrong the textbook definition of a business enterprise is. And I think that the younger people these days, as much grief as we give, and complaints about the millennials and Gen Xers and stuff, I think they have it right. They're less about the money and they're more about the impact.
Well, Howie, if I can just say this, you did speak at Global Chamber San Antonio, and you came under the invitation of Joel Ingaloo, who is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He was also a student under Desiree, Professor Desiree, at UT SA. And I just know that when you spoke to our chamber, you really electrified our audience to know how to network, how business should go. You were a tremendous resource. I was blessed, and our organization was blessed because of you. I just know that it was a coincidence, though, that both of you share the same protege with Joel
Right.
Ingaloo, and the three of us share that relationship. He's been one of my most dynamic people that I've actually had the chance to meet with. After I taught a class for Desiree, he called me. He volunteered to see how he could serve, and so I was like, okay. He became my prayer partner because I went through cancer. Prostate cancer, and actually I went into stage 4 lymph node cancer.
Wow.
And so my life was on the line, but Joel stood up and he became that guy for me, praying with me, helping me just to navigate as my deputy director of Global Chamber San Antonio. So I did bring him into the organization, made him my right-hand man. And then through his vision of wanting to give back to the orphanage that they support there in Congo, you can see how a global chamber can facilitate international citizens who are part of San Antonio or Texas, and then they can actually have a platform to even market those things in which they believe are true back in their homes. So I appreciate you for being that guy for him as well, and Desiree, the same for you. Thank you so much.
So I'm happy to volunteer again, come out and speak. Desiree and I have many things planned, even though we haven't talked about it, but I feel our brains connecting on what we can do. And by the way, you can call me Professor Howie because I put Joel through Howie's College of Marketing Knowledge because he interned with me and then I hired him for a little while.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. And, I do want to point out one thing because I have been involved with our younger generation for so long as a professor at different colleges and universities here in San Antonio. I have always said our younger generation right now, I'm just thrilled for the next generation of leaders. They are very unique in the sense that we are not going to be the next generation are not corporate executives. They are going to be entrepreneurs. That is a trend that we are seeing here. Here in our different generational gaps, I know that we are all entrepreneurs.
Right.
Here, all I have known is a life of entrepreneurship. Professor was actually just kind of a side hustle to me, turned into something larger. But we have a generation of entrepreneurs. We have to show them tenets of giving back, show them how cause-related marketing works. That is a very effective way. That's essentially what we're talking about here, is cause marketing that philanthropists engage in through way of their businesses and their philanthropic counterparts in the community. We realize that giving back is something that's great because we are serving the same community. Their patrons are our nonprofit patrons as well. So we're kind of in on this together. But again, just highlighting that generational, the difference in generations. Again, I see entrepreneurship. The trends are showing entrepreneurship is way of life for those Gen Zers, definitely the Gen X, Gen Z, Alphas. That is just what they want. That is the trend.
Yeah, and if you combine that entrepreneurship with the giving and it's a winning combination.
So what we're talking about here is holistic entrepreneurship.
I love it.
And I get a quarter every time somebody says that too. But anyway, you have this idea that it's like your body, right? You have to eat a variety of foods, right? There's blessing over food, which that's a whole other thing, right? But same thing with entrepreneurship is you need to not only go in with your talent and do something that's productive and profitable, marketable that people are willing to pay for, but then you also have to give back. Not just give back, but you have to participate as well. Because the more we participate in community, the better the community is, the better the organism, right, that is San Antonio or any city or the world is. So
did you pick up any of that giving that Christopher talked about when you were in the Air Force or in the police force? Was that part of your training and part of your way of how you were evaluated?
No, I must have avoided that like the plague. I think the first time I was introduced to that was actually when I was brand new to the San Antonio Police Department. I was getting stationed on the south side over off Mayfield, West Mayfield. That the sergeant was like, well, hey, there's a community event going on at the mall, and you should go to it. And I was like, cool. That was the first time I had been introduced to something that was like participating in the community that I was serving. That was the first time that I can remember. I probably just had missed it when I was an airman in the Air Force, but yeah.
Well, typically, as a former commander, what we would say is that we would like for the troops to all participate. So participation with a paycheck it could be $1 per month, or it can be $100 per month, but we always leave the level to the person. But we would say, as a unit, we would like to have 100 participation from the unit. So that kind of was the beginning. But then when you talk about those who were called to do more, and so I had the privilege of being able to lead Combined Federal Campaign year after year at various locations around the world, which always gave me the chance to kind of reach in and figure out who were the bright, shiny people who I would like to work with, on other projects.
So what's the downside? And I'll ask either of you. What's the downside to giving? what things have you seen? That it takes too much time. People think you're doing it just because you're getting paid to do it, and there's got to be some ulterior motive why you can't just be helping the less fortunate.
Well, I will say that as a mother of 4 and as a wife, I'm traditional Latina. So my family is always first, right? I've always put being wife and mom first. And there are some points I think you have to really know when to give back. So when you are capable of giving back, how you are capable of giving back is important. Just you have to know when you are capable of giving. That's one of the largest hurdles is time, right? Time to me is the most precious donation a person can give. To give money may be easier for some individuals. For us, my husband donating to United Way, that's something easier. But as Chris and as Marcus, participation is something different.
Well, you can make more money. You just can't get your time back. And once you donate your time, so that in essence, you could argue that that's actually more valuable when you give of your time, because then you don't get to spend time with your 4 kids or with your husband. And, and if you didn't give that time and you focused on your business, maybe you'd have a big ranch, maybe you'd have a helicopter, maybe you can go hunting all over the world or whatever you want to do, because you didn't, quote unquote, waste your time. But you gave plenty of money and you got nice recognition and awards for being a philanthropist. You didn't have to waste your time.
So I think that there's always the issue of perception that people who are very benevolent go through. And so I just say, don't worry about what the haters say. Just keep doing what's on your heart.
Hey.
The other thing I would say is that, we all go through certain seasons. And so the season for me, I discovered that, I thought for the most part until I reached the age of 49 that I was very healthy, strong, could do anything, was invincible. And then all of a sudden this C word came into place. And so and that just put me on my back. But then, I'm at 55 now, and I can say that after going through the season of cancer and then coming out with a miracle healing, that my season is also now to give to those areas that I was deeply impacted by. So, I volunteered this year to help raise over $100,000 with the Susan Komen Foundation as a pink tie guy. And we really did a great job as men to bring visibility to that. I met some great people. And relationships. And then most recently this weekend, I participated in Angie's Angels 7th annual fashion
Had I not
show.
been in South Texas, I would have been to that.
Yeah.
I love that
And look, she's
organization.
working with little kids who are battling through cancer, who doesn't, I mean, they're really going through it, but she had a heart to form a nonprofit organization that really serves those who are cancer survivors and those who are going through the battle. And so, again, I was like, well, okay, I went through the storm, but now I'm on the other side. Right. So now part of my service is to give back in areas that can help to lift the visibility of these nonprofit organizations while still being in business, still representing Global Chamber, San Antonio, Austin, and Houston, and really spotlighting the fact that, we need to know that the nonprofit and the for-profit can work together. We can serve the missions respectively, and we can bring honor to where honor is due.
Yeah, and when you talk about seasons, And Desiree kind of hit on this. If you're in a position to give, because seasons change, and you're going to find yourself in a position where you're the recipient.
Yes.
And it feels odd.
Very odd.
I had a house fire, very different than cancer, but I had a house fire, and a third of my house burned down. I had 3 little kids in the house. We all exited and got out, and then things started to explode in the garage. My cars collapsed, fire department, all that stuff. I got calls from friends that very night, and then the next morning, and a friend of mine, Abe, who's a client of Krug's virtual staffing, came and dropped off a Suburban at the hotel. He goes, "Hey, you need a car, all your car's burnt." And then people call, "Hey, do you need clothes?" And I'm thinking like, wait a second. All of a sudden, how am I the recipient of this stuff? I'm the giver. Hold on. It didn't feel right, but it felt really good.
Absolutely.
So when you're in the season of receiving, be a good recipient. And when you're in the season of giving, be a good giver.
One of the things about business that I just want to touch on, as a CEO of a company, and I've also had for-profit companies that were really successful. But then I think that with being a business owner, sometimes we develop an arrogancy about our own lives, about other people, and we kind of believe like we're at the head, and we go through humbling moments and times which make us reflect on who we are, whose we are, and I think that's also important because for some that are in business, they may need to be more grounded to figure out how can I be a servant leader versus just being a leader, and then that will give them the right tools to figure out how to serve and to walk with humility as they're being blessed. Because ultimately, there's nothing wrong with being blessed and having lots of money, but it's really the people who I think of Morgan's Wonderland.
Gordon Hartman.
Gordon was there at the event, and just seeing him and knowing his success and knowing what he's doing to build a community. What a warm heart, and that was one of the individuals. I saw the district attorney Joe Gonzalez in the audience. I saw Sandra Banks. You look at people and you see how they react to helping others. It's really a blessing to be in the situation to meet people like that because their heart is in the right place.
You mentioned about CEOs and like a detachment. I got acquainted to this when I was on the police department. It seemed like once you made lieutenant or higher, there's a huge detachment between what goes on the patrol level, that like lieutenants should have like almost zero contact with a patrolman because you don't know what's going on. That's for the sergeants, right? But there's a phrase that the higher up the flagpole you go, the more you expose yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So as I'm a CEO as well, and I work harder to serve my staff. That's the higher up you are, the more you actually need to make sure that your staff is cared for.
Indeed.
It's
Amen.
Completely opposite of this arrogant feeling like, oh, I'm the big guy. Everybody has to make way for me. It's like, that's not how it is at all. I don't view CEOs that way.
But the thing is, that's not automatic. You have a lot of CEOs that act like Christopher talked about, and like maybe we've all experienced, right? I think sometimes, though, CEOs, especially the very successful ones, live out Kenny Chesney's song, Rich and Miserable, They're there. They've made it. Mm-hmm. Everybody else around them is struggling. And there's a certain sense of loneliness that comes with that because you didn't bring your team up. And then what kind of leader would you be? And you guys were in the military, and thank you all for your service. What kind of commander would you be if you're the only one that survived a mission?
There's a book that teaches about how the CEO's job is really to only make a few decisions a day, right? The company can't run without the people that are running the company. And if the leader doesn't understand that, they're not in the right place at all. They're not equipped to handle that leadership role. It really is servant. The higher up you go, the more you serve. And I think, Jesus made that very example. I mean, if you want a great shining example of that, that's what that is.
Well, they say leaders create other leaders. If you are not creating other leaders, you are not a leader.
Not tyrants. We're creating leaders, not tyrants.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, you know how I say it? you're either training people or they're training you. And if you're not training them, guess what? You're the one being trained because then they show up when they want, they do what they want, and you're going to always be pissed off because you haven't trained them.
We got to turn that into a quote. I'm going to mark the time down on that.
Well, I also believe that, so I'm in ministry, and I've been in ministry, and I look at ministry and business as being, two entities that can coexist together. Sometimes we get duped into believing that there needs to be a separation of church and state. People use that cliche all the time. But for me, when I do look at the walk of Jesus, who went into the marketplace, and the marketplace is where the businesses are. In fact, Jesus went and he recruited his disciples out of their places of work. We had, tax collectors, we had doctors, we had lawyers, we had people who are in business. And so for me now, when I walk, I want people to be able to receive a message of hope, of love. And that's where I am. That's my season. I'm in the season of love.
And apparently you're looking to get recruited because you're in a place of business. All right, Chris, we're about out of time. If folks want to follow you, get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so globalchamber.org is our main site. San Antonio, Austin, and Houston are all on there as the locations. So my bio and my email address is christopher@globalchamber.org. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, so they can tie in there as well. But more than happy to friend anyone and to share, because that's what we're in the business of, is sharing and caring.
Thank you, Chris. And Desiree, if folks want to follow you, how do they do that?
You can look me up on Instagram at the Texas TX Nonprofit Guru. I am across all platforms as well. And you can also reach me at Desiree at satxsolutions.com.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Howie, any closing thoughts?
What a fun and fulfilling conversation, really. This is where I light up. I love the nonprofits, and I feel like I'm running out of time. I got to do more. And, people say, how do you have so much energy? You find your passion.
Yes.
And the energy comes along with it.
You do it well, Howie.
And then I'll tell you that the money comes after that.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how. It just happens.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's an energy thing. I think you put out, people that are in giving mode, I've seen it, is, using that giver gain mentality, and it does come back to you. I think it's a vibration, frequency, just
Absolutely.
a thing.
It's fulfilling. Our souls need to be fulfilled, and for so many, money does not do it.
No. I mean, money's important. I mean, we've got to have it, but it's not the end.
Can't take it with you.
No, you can't.
I'll
Can't
tell
take
you.
anything with you.
I'll leave you all with what a rabbi told me one time. Earth is a place to do. Heaven is a place to be. Mm-hmm. So while you're on earth and you have your faculties about you, you have to do. Once you're in the afterworld, you're not going to have your physical body. You can only be.
Yes.
So while you're here, do.
All right.
We can all do better. Let's do it.
That's right.
Love that. All right, as we wrap up this fantastic show that we just had with some fantastic people, quick reminder to check out our latest podcast and catch video version of the show anytime by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. All those fancy little social media buttons there, just click on all those. Make sure you're following the Let's Talk Business podcast and these other folks here that join me on the show on a regular basis. That's going to be it for this one. You guys have a great week. We'll see you on the next one.